episode of the Caffeinated Librarians. I'm Simona,
I'm Amy.
and we'll be discussing the 2005 fantasy adventure film, The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So this film is co-written and directed by Andrew Adamson and is based on the 1950 novel of the same name by C.S. Lewis. And fun fact, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe has been adapted 3 times for television and has also been adapted for the theater. So just a brief summary of what the book and the film is about. I'm going to try to keep this as brief as I can. So it tells the story of the Pevensey siblings, Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy, who are evacuated from their London home during the Second World War because London is being bombed. And they're sent to live with an eccentric professor in the English countryside. And they're playing a game of hide and seek one day. And Lucy discovers this old wardrobe, climbs in it, and is transported to this magical land of Narnia. Eventually, her siblings sort of follow suit because they're running away from the housekeeper one day, and they all enter the wardrobe, and they're also brought into Narnia. And fun fact, they eventually learn that they are the fulfillment of an ancient prophecy that states that 2 sons of Adam and 2 daughters of Eve will defeat the White Witch, who's the main antagonist in this novel, and end her eternal winter and eventually rule Narnia. So that's a very brief introduction of what the film and the first book is about.
Nicely summarized.
Thank you. I've actually read all 7 novels. This was a few years ago. I was telling Lewis that my favorite of the 7 is The Silver Chair. But I did enjoy this movie. It's the first, they made Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Caspian, and Voyage of the Dawn Treader, which are the first 3 books, into a film. I don't like the other 2. I do like this one. I believe that it is closer and more faithful to the source material than the other 2 are. But my favorite, and I was also telling this to Lewis, is a 1980s BBC television adaptation. And it was of the first 4 novels. And it's one of my favorite because that one is very faithful to the source material. Obviously, the graphics aren't as good. You have people dressed up like Mr. and Mr. Beaver are these people in gigantic beaver costumes.
Oh, that's fantastic.
But I feel that the spirit of the books is more closely, not closely, it's the wrong word I'm looking for, but it's the 80s corniness aside, bad graphics aside, is better. And I was telling Lewis that Netflix bought the rights for all 7 novels. They bought it in 2018. So, I mean, nothing has been mentioned since, but Lewis did mention that they're they're going to be developing the world a bit more, because one of the things is that the world is not as well developed in the novels. So they'll be working on that. So hopefully if they do produce these books, I'm looking forward to see what they're going to do with them. And yeah, but no other word on whether or not or when that's happening. It's sort of been picked up and then they haven't discussed it again, but I'm curious. Hopefully they do, they will do them. But
yeah, I feel like that they're gonna do some sort of like show instead of one-off movies. You know, maybe the gritty reality after they won the kingdom, they all have problems.
Yeah, they definitely, I think one of the reasons why they wanted to make them into a series because they feel that there's a lot to sort of go through. So a film wouldn't be sufficient. So I think that's why they wanted to do it as a series.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see.
And the latter books have never been adapted. So
Right.
If this does happen, then it would be the first time for that, which is something that they are really trying to do, which is why they want to develop the world. They were likening it to the development of the world of like Game of Thrones and the Marvel universe and stuff like that. Like they really want to develop it to those depths.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be cool. I mean, I don't know if it was just the the way they directed it. And I was watching it with my daughter. So initially, they have this, they're shelling everywhere and everybody's terrified and all the moms are at the train station because all the dads are at war and they're all sending their kids away and crying. I could have done without, like it was like one sentence. They were sent there because of the war. Done. Like, so as a parent, like it might have just rubbed me the wrong way for the whole film. Like I was just so like really, this is a kid's book, and they made it so fraught.
And in the original series that I remember, and I own all of them, that is not mentioned. What you see is that they're waiting at this small train station in the country and they're picked up. Now, I'm going to assume that British audiences would understand the context, even if you haven't read the books, the time period, and you would know what is going on.
Right.
Thinking they may have done that for the benefit of American audiences who, for some reason, may not be aware that England or Britain was being bombed at that time.
Right. I mean, if they
Say
put
it that
here,
we're dumber.
yeah, no, not really, honestly, probably, yeah. But I feel like if they just put the year, if they were like, or World War II or something,
Yeah.
rather than like, and especially as a home viewer, maybe if I brought, if we were at the theater, I wouldn't be as afraid of Ellie just like going, nope, peace, and, leaving. But, that was like not a not big deal for kids,
I think also another reason why they may have done that, if in the second film, which really strays from the source material, in the second film, Peter becomes a real jerk. He sort of has, because they've left Narnia, he's back in his world. The war is still going on, and he almost feels as if the outside world isn't taking him seriously because he's a child.
Right.
And this line where basically says, I was a king, I led armies. And so, because there's a scene in the first film when Peter and his family are boarding that he's looking off at soldiers who are being deployed.
Mm-hmm.
Second film, Peter very much wants to do something. He wants to be active. He wants to be taken seriously. So I wonder maybe if that's why they had that in there. Also to generate some source of conflict for Edmund and Peter, because Edmund is very much the brat of the group. Believe it or not, he's a lot worse in the books than they make
Oh
him
yeah, he's awful. He's
in the
such a
film.
slime bag. I've read the book before, or I've listened to it before, so like I know he's just I don't want to say what I call him in my head.
What does
But
it rhyme with?
a nice big mass pull.
Got it.
We're editing, but he's such a jerk, and that's the word I used during watching it with Ellie. Whenever he was like kind of a turd, I'd be like, what a jerk he is. Also turd, and that's probably more acceptable. But he's, and my husband was very quick to say, well, he was just sent away because of a war and he's having trouble, but still he's so mean. And they also say that he's not very nice to kids. He wasn't very nice to kids that were smaller than him back at school, when he like sends Lucy away crying because he lied about seeing Narnia. So I think that he definitely, if everything goes right, he's a nice dude.
Mhm.
But when things are going wrong, he's a jealous, conniving kind of sneak.
Yeah, and I think the reason why the film, I think, felt the need to add the fact that, oh, he's missing his father, was because like a child or a person can't be a jerk because they're a jerk. There has to always be these outside forces.
Mhm.
And I think it's sort of to make him somewhat more likable and relatable. So that's why I think the film did that, where you have to see, oh, he's just a kid who's struggling with the absence of a father, which in
Right.
the books, as far as I recall, there's no indication of that. He's just a brat, and
He's kind of, yeah.
thankfully he goes through much development over
Mm,
the book and over the course of the series. Um,
cool.
So, but I think that's what it was, because like I said, with the television series, you get none of that backstory. They're just sent this eccentric guy who you never even see, I think, until like maybe the end of the BBC production. But one of the things about the film, I think sort of one of the few actors that sort of steals the film for me is Tilda Swinton,
He's amazing.
who plays Jadis, the White Witch. I enjoyed her performance. I actually loved, though, the performance of Barbara Kellerman from the 1980s adaptation. Also, I love Barbara Kellerman's look. Tilda Swinton didn't come across as someone necessarily that you should be fearing, because at any moment she could snap. Like if you watch the production from the 80s, the White Witch is genuinely terrifying. Like
Mhm.
you feel like at any moment she'll go from smiling at you to like stabbing you or like turning you to stone. So in that sense, I think Barbara Kellerman did a better job. But Tilda Swinton is still great. I think she definitely brings something to the role and brings something to the character. One of my favorite moments is when she goes to Aslan's camp. So Aslan, if you're not familiar, he is the creator of the world of Narnia. He is essentially the god figure of this country of mythical people. And he's been away for a very long time. Where he's,
Pause. I
yeah, no
have a
one knows.
question. I have a
Yes.
very serious question. Where did I miss that he created Narnia? Because I think I missed that.
So, okay, so one of the things that I was going to bring up, and it is very important, is, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time, I don't want to, it's chronological Narnian order versus publication order. So in terms of publication order, it's The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Prince Caspian, Voyage of the Dawn Treader, The Silver Chair, The Horse and His Boy, The Magician's Nephew, The Last Battle. If you look at chronological order of the Narnian universe, the first book should be The Magician's Nephew, which, and the magician turns out to be the eccentric, the magician's nephew is the eccentric older man who owns the place where they're currently residing. He is the son of this eccentric magician who discovered the portal to Narnia. So in The Magician's Nephew,
Oh.
yeah, so The Magician's Nephew is where you learn the origin of the Narnian universe. So what happens is that this young boy and his best friend, a girl named Polly, enter the land of Narnia using these magical rings. And one day they come across this lion who is literally singing the world into being. So he's singing the plants and the trees, he's creating the animals.
Is he singing the Circle of Life?
I don't know what he's singing, but he's singing. So that's when you learn that Aslan is the one that created the world. He's the one that gave the gift of speech to animals. And you also learn about the first king and queen of Narnia. That's also why there's a lamppost in Narnia, because Jadis, who was the White Witch, she came from a world that was dying. Basically, she ruled this world with a few other magical men and women, but I think she killed all the other ones, so she was the only remaining one. And she enters into Narnia. She sees Aslan doing his thing, and she's terrified. And somehow she ends up in our world, and she snatches a lamppost and brings it into Narnia, which is why they have a lamppost. So, yeah. So, long story short, that's why it's very confusing if you just read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, you're sort of entering the universe in the middle, so to speak.
Okay, so there really needs to be this Star Wars like crawl at the beginning, like a long time ago, and just goes through that whole thing, because a lot of things make a lot more sense now.
And also, C.S. Lewis, he was having a conversation with this young American boy who wrote to him, and the boy was having an argument with his mother, like, should the books be read in publication order? Should it be read in chronological order? And C.S. Lewis stated that he had never planned to write past the first book. So he had never considered any of this.
Mhm.
And I think he said that whichever order you chose to read it was fine with him. He, he didn't really care as long as you read the books.
As
Now,
long as you're buying them, right?
yeah, well, there are some purists who believe you read them in publication order.
Mhm.
Other people who say you read it in chronological order. I'm of the position, whatever order you want to read it, read it. But I think if the world is to make any sense, I think it would make sense to read it in chronological order.
I mean, I think it has to do with like there are a lot of things like that. Like I adore Preston and Child's Pendergast series, where they have like it's just this like completely bougie detective from New Orleans, and he's very sophisticated, and it's fantastic.
My
It's
mom loves that series.
oh my God.
Loves
Oh my God. I
Pendergast.
love him. I love him. But it's the same thing. You could start at the relic, or you could just kind of go around, because none of them really connect enough
Mm-hmm.
that it would spoil anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like the later books, actually, like there is some problem if you go in like kind of like mid those, but the ones he's kind of just showing up in, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, so that would explain the confusion. So so Aslan is the creator. He is the god figure in this universe, and he's been away, and he's finally returned, and he's gathering his forces. So the White Witch, who and this is another thing that I think was done better in the 80s adaptation, where you see her desperation a bit more, because she's really losing control of everything that she's built for the past 100 years.
Yeah.
He basically, and Edmund has been returned to his siblings, and Jadis is not happy with it. So she goes to Aslan and demands, this is one of my favorite moments of the book and of the movie, and she goes to demand that she be given what she is owed.
Mhm.
And Aslan basically says, we can come to some sort of arrangement. You don't learn what the arrangement is until a little later. And he has offered his life in exchange for that of Edmund. And I love that moment, the sacrifice moment. I think in both the series adaptation and the film, you feel Aslan's fear, because this is something he's willingly doing, but at the same time, he's very much afraid because he's going to die.
Okay, I'm going to jump in here.
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, he looked sad, and I get that. I would be sad and scared. But he also knew there was a cheat code. Like like I can't believe he was not gonna mention to anyone. He's just gonna wander off in the dark, get murdered, and like could you throw your like entire world of loyal subjects a bone here? Like
Well, if you sort of, because it is, and excuse me if I'm stating the obvious, that's not my intention here. It is an allegory for Jesus Christ and his sacrifice in the Garden of Gethsemane, when he's with his apostles and he wanders off, and
right, and his
big conversation with God, and he admits he's fearful, but he understands he has to do it. And I'm assuming Jesus knew he would resurrect after 3 days, I'm assuming. But he was still fearful. So it's sort of the same thing, where Aslan is very much aware, I'm going to cheat this, I'm going to win. But he doesn't tell anyone. The only reason why Lucy and Susan find out is because they follow him.
right.
And he basically says, you can follow me up to a certain point, but you cannot go any further. And whatever you do, don't make any noise, don't try to intervene, just let whatever is going to happen happen.
Right. And like, she's a double crosser because she's a traitor. Duh. I mean, like, I have so many problems with this part specifically. Like,
Okay.
first of all, don't punch a lion. Don't punch lions. That's sad. That's terrifying. I don't like it. I did not like that scene. Like, thankfully we had to stop for bedtime. You don't know the amount of prep I'm gonna have to do for the rest of this movie. Everybody's gonna be fine. Everybody's gonna be fine. Should we fast forward this? Should we fast forward this? Should we fast forward this? Here's the end. Like, so I feel like, again, kids movie, why you punching a lion? And so, that again is, the perspective of somebody that has to watch this at some point. And, if we were just watching it for fun, again, that movie would have been over. Like, like the minute they punched that lion, if there was no prep, you'd be like, good deal, like, bye. So, because we're a very animal loving home, we're very, we have too many, and she takes that kind of thing very seriously.
No,
So
it's definitely understandable. I remember I read where this young boy wrote to C.S. Lewis that he was starting to love Aslan more than Jesus, so conflicted about it. And I forgot how C.S. Lewis reassured him, because the kid was connecting with Aslan on that emotional level. He was like, I love him more than Jesus. Is that wrong? But yeah. Yeah, that meant that scene is always very difficult, because like I said, you feel Aslan's fear because he's basically surrounded by enemies, and also the scene where they shave him is like,
is she wearing his hair?
yes, she is.
Okay, yes. Okay. And is it a lion on her headdress?
I don't know if it's a
Like, you have fangs. I saw fangs. Like, I did not have enough time to Google that, but it seems like, why you, like, maybe, I guess it's like she's like she's beheaded him in effigy, but it seems
I remember behind the scenes when they were talking about her costuming, which is another fun thing that I'm going to mention about her costume.
Yeah.
I didn't realize she was, because a lot of times when I watch, I don't pay attention. So first time I watched it, I didn't realize she was wearing his fur.
Well, I thought her hair was down at first.
And then I watched the behind the scenes, and we thought it would make it visually interesting if you see that she's triumphantly wearing Aslan's mane. And I'm like, that's what that is? So very cool. And it's fitting with her character because she believes she's just defeated someone. But I love the thing about her dress and her crown, because her dress starts off as this very vibrant blue. Her crown is this epically like tall, like ice pillar. And as her power starts to wane, as her control wanes, the dress becomes more and more muted and her crown shrinks.
It looks like a tree. It looks like
melted. Oh, it's supposed to be like icicles. Slowly start to melt because she's losing her power and her control. So eventually she has nothing on her head, and even her dress is changing color. It's becoming more muted and whatnot, which I thought was a very interesting touch. I really enjoyed that, like that attention to detail with the costuming, and yeah. So
yeah, I didn't get her hair. Like, I do really enjoy costumes. So I as much as I could, I wanted to see like hers, because she's the only one that's really dressed for it, except, might I add, why does Tumnus wear a scarf and no shirt?
See, in the book, the illustration and the illustrator for the original stories was Pauline Baines. She was the original illustrator for the novels. In the illustration, he's wearing a coat. I mean, he has no shirt underneath, but he has a coat with the scarf.
That seems legit.
Maybe they needed some Tumnus eye candy. I really have no idea, because
that was not eye candy.
It's like, what is the point of the scarf if you're bare chested? Unless you don't feel the cold, which is not indicated in the film because he lights a fire and he,
And you're wearing a scarf.
yeah, I sometimes I think, I don't know. It didn't make sense to me either. Like sometimes I really question the choices in certain films, but
Right. I mean, if Tumnus was ripped, I'd get that. But I mean, he's a fine looking dude. But but I don't like I did not see the allure of having a scarf on that and just calling it a day.
yeah, I really, like I said, in the books he has a coat on, so I don't get it either. But
Okay. At least I'm not alone.
no.
Sorry, I tangented, but
No, because I mean, costuming, one would assume a lot of thought and effort goes into costuming, and the costumes are supposed to reflect an aspect of the character.
mhm.
Her hair is visually interesting. It's like dreads or dreadlocks or um
And it's
like
all pulled up into a point,
yeah.
which I mean, her dress definitely looks like it's part of a tree. Like it's very wood looking, like bark looking. So
Mhm.
I was trying to fit that hair concoction into something tree-y, but I just couldn't really get it. And I did not like her makeup either.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming the pale, sort of washed out look maybe supposed to make her look almost like ice or snow.
Right. I mean, I thought that like she was it was weird, and I loved the way she played it. I especially loved when she like just roars no at Edmund and then it's like, never mind. But again, I really felt like it I could not understand. She was pale, but she like it didn't seem like she was flushed through it. I feel like they
Mm.
should have just like grease painted her white. Like I feel like they really could have done a better job. Like the screen testing of that just it didn't work. Like
Mm.
the whole like I didn't understand, and I would like to understand. Like if evil people are wearing evil costumes, I want to know. Like I want to know what that means. Like why is that hair like that? You know, I thought it was cool, but I feel like it needed more of it wasn't as cohesive as I would have liked. Um and yeah, I mean, and then the girls got their beautiful dresses and the boys got their beautiful not that fancy clothes. I didn't Another thing that I really had a problem with was like how much more important the boys were.
Um, I can understand that. I sort of attribute it to the fact that C.S. Lewis was a product of his time. I know that sounds trite, and there were people that thought differently, but I think at the time when he was writing, maybe most of the audience he was writing to, there was an expectation. What I will say is that in the Horse and His Boy, which in chronological Narnian order would be, oh, sorry, yeah, I said The Horse and His Boy is the third one. And that's when you see them actually as the rulers of Narnia.
Mhm.
And Lucy and Susan are known as being good fighters. So when they're ruling, Susan and Lucy are involved in what's going on. One of the things that I think some people wouldn't understand, like especially with Susan archery, is that she takes archery in school, which is why she's so skilled with a bow. It's not that she just automatically knows what she has to do.
Right.
And and also like in the films they made, like in the second film especially, Susan is very much part of the battle, but an aspect of her character is that she's very kind. So there's a scene in Prince Caspian when they've been transported back to Narnia. They've been basically literally called out of their bodies and sent to Narnia. She has to shoot an arrow at this guy that's tormenting this dwarf. In the second film, they actually make her kill him. in the book, she intentionally, I think, hits him in a point which wouldn't kill him. And she says, oh, I hope I haven't hurt him, because that's not her.
Right.
She
That's not her
doesn't want to
character.
hurt anyone. So I don't know. I
Yeah.
know in the films, they made the girls a bit more proactive because they wanted to sort of rectify what's absent in the books. But what I will say is that the girls are proactive in another way. While they may not participate in the battle, they're essential in another way.
Mhm.
So they sort of help Aslan gather more of the forces that he brings over to the battle, because he goes to the witch's castle, he wakes everyone up by
Right, because he got double crossed by a bad guy. Oh, sorry, that like will never not make me mad.
Yeah, I think that's where I probably think is a shortcoming of the film, because Aslan is very much like, I remember this was an aspect of Aslan's character that reminded me of Gandalf from The Lord of the Rings, where he knows a lot. He won't really tell you what you need to know. He'll drop in at the last moment, offer sage advice, and say, peace out, do what you must. Aslan is very much the same way. Which is like, I'm not going to personally intervene unless I really feel that I need to, because I expect you to be able to make the right decision. So he'll disappear for times on end. Like, he won't basically be present, and he leaves you to figure out what you have to do.
Right.
So that's an aspect of his character. And I think he's very much a manipulator, like a chess player. Like, he knows what's going to happen. And he sort of knows or expects you to behave in a certain way and do what you must, so to speak. So I think with the agreement with the witch, I think Aslan was very much aware she's not going to honor her agreement because she thinks she's won.
Mhm.
Thinks she's defeated me, but she hasn't.
Right.
So I don't think he ever expected her to basically say, oh, well, Aslan has died. I got what I wanted. I can go on and do my thing someplace else.
Right.
And obviously he's not going to say anything,
Mhm.
They realize, I'm trying to think of in the books, if Lucy and Susan are able to communicate that they're getting more forces. I don't think they do. I think they just go with Aslan. He literally breathes the breath of life into the statues. They all are so excited, like, Aslan's back. You've been gone forever. What's up? And basically says, okay, I understand you're excited, my people, but we got work to do. And he basically takes them to the battle and they defeat the White Witch.
Right. Yeah. And
That's just how he rolls.
I'm just gonna say, because like the Nutcracker and this are both like, they both have Christmas references, but they're not about Christmas.
Mhm.
Which I do feel is important, as a not feeling like we're like dissing the audience, because they're winter films and it does reference Christmas, but there's like hardly anything about Christmas in either of them. But I still feel kind of cruddy about it, because but I was like, when Santa Claus showed up, I was like, what now? And like everybody knew except me. I'm sitting on the couch, and like when the otter or the beaver comes and is like, come on out, Ellie's like, Santa. And I was like, no, Santa's not in this. And my husband's like, yeah, he is. But
Yeah, because he's been gone for 100 years. Apparently, I don't understand why Jadis was opposed to Christmas, other than being a joy suck.
yeah, people don't.
He wants to be happy. Because I can't think of if they ever explained why she didn't want Christmas.
I think it just makes people sad.
Probably.
Yeah, I mean, I think that she would have been like really opposed to Kwanzaa or Hanukkah too. Like
Anything that brings you any sort of happiness. It's not to happen. No.
Yeah. I do find the, now that I know a little bit more about the universe that I didn't know, I do see, obviously I see the Jesus, allegory pretty well. But you know, I also noticed that he did kill the witch.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a very, you know, like that's a pretty big statement if we are saying that it's an allegory to God and Jesus. That like Old Testament God would have, but Jesus would not, I don't think, have just killed somebody.
No, he would not have done it. He could definitely be testy. Like I'm even thinking of him going into the temple and seeing
Right.
the money exchange, and he basically starts trashing the place. I didn't see him as
Tables
money
is,
lenders.
yeah.
Yeah, but there's another scene in the books and it's done in punishment where there's this particular character that I think doubts Aslan, or she does something, and she and the other character are riding on a horse, and there's this lion that's just pursuing them, and she's terrified because she has no idea who this is. And he reaches out and scratches her, and the scratch is meant as a chastisement of that character. Doesn't kill her, but he scratches her. And I remember reading that, I was like, oh my, I said, Aslan. I was like, this is.
Is this a critique? Is this like C.S. Lewis saying like sometimes you gotta be firm. Sometimes you gotta give somebody a big facial scar. You gotta kill someone. Like, to be so obvious on that allegory and then have him kill someone. And I get it. Like, I'm not saying that like we should have like had a party for her, but you know, like where is he coming from writing that he ended someone?
I don't know, because if you think about it, like even in the New Testament, Jesus will let demons possess a bunch of pigs and let them throw into the river. Like, yeah. So I don't know. I guess it kind of makes sense to me. Maybe I don't know. But like I said, I don't remember if he actually does that in the books. I don't even remember. But I guess they kind of figured also she's the bad guy, so she deserves that kind of sticky ending.
Hmm. It's just, you know, I don't necessarily have any real, you know, leaning one way or another on this. And like I went into it hearing, you know, this Aslan just straight up Jesus. And so like I never came into it with any other point of view about it, even though like the minute he rose, I'd be like straight up Jesus. But you know, I do wonder, because that it doesn't seem it I'm not like I'm a Jew. I'm Jewish, so like the whole New Testament for me, I've read it. It's super interesting. I don't know. I'm a little agnostic about it, honestly. I'm a agnostic about most things religious, but it doesn't seem in character.
Yeah, no, I can understand that, And then Aslan in the other books, he's not as like I said, I don't even remember what he does in the first book, but let's just assume in the first book he kills her as well. In the other books, he's not as violent.
Mhm.
He does like scratch the back of the girl. Um, but in the other books, he's not as much. First of all, there are times where he's not even present. Like he'll just quickly say, "This is what I want of you," and he can get frustrated. He can lose his temper. Um, but a lot of the times, that's in response to like someone complaining about something, or like, "I don't really want to do this, and you're making me do it."
Right.
So I don't know. That doesn't justify back scratching or clawing or whatever. I'm just saying.
No.
Usually it's because the other character is being willfully disobedient.
Mhm.
Say, okay, this is what you have to do and do it. And then he leaves.
I am gonna flounce now. So let's move on to, because we don't have a ton of time left. I would just like to propose the mental health issues that would come about if you were like just a grown up, like
Mhm.
specifically Lucy. I would be homicidal at the loss of agency. Like, can you imagine you're an adult and then like you walk back through a door and you're like 7? No.
Yeah, and I see what you're saying. The second film in the new series addresses that issue because in the books, it's more like, and I guess maybe they behaved the way British children were expected to behave because
Mm,
thinking of a line, and this is in the second book, and they've come back and they're trying to figure out where they are because in the second book, centuries have passed. And that was another thing with C.S. Lewis, and he died before he could correct this issue. The time differences never always matched up. Like, oh, I've been in Narnia for like 2 days and only 2 minutes have passed. I've been here for like 4 days and now 7 weeks have passed.
right.
Timing never made sense. So when they come back to Narnia, thousands of years have passed. There's these new people that invaded Narnia and are ruling. So when they get to Narnia, they don't even know where they are.
Mhm,
They've entered another world. And there's a scene, and like they handle being blown off and perfectly fine. Like, oh, we landed some
mhm.
this. So, and there's a scene where Peter goes, because like everyone's kind of arguing. Peter goes, oh, please. He says, let a chap think. So the way they behave, I think, is very much how British people were expecting, like, stiff upper lip, like just, get it done, get your bit, like, get your bearings and move on. Because if I got transported and I don't even know where I am, I wouldn't be that calm. So I think that's probably a reflection of maybe the society that like he was writing for. One would assume maybe that even though they've gone back to children, they still have the memories of being in Narnia.
And
So
an adult, yes.
maybe mentally they've aged, even though physically, once they return, they're back to being. And when they return, they can still hear Macready searching for them. So they've been in Narnia for years and years and years.
Right.
They're adults, like they've established their kingdom. And then I was also thinking they up and left everyone.
I know. The Macready is probably pretty ticked off, as well as
So,
afraid for her job. And like the professor's like, it's okay. No worries. I gave him fur coats. They're good.
so, but then again, like I said, if he wasn't ever planning to write anymore, maybe he thought, I've done my job. This is good, you know? But yeah, that's why honestly, that being the first book, and then you read the other books and you're like, I'm so confused, because it was published one way and
Right.
yeah, so it's like you're entering the world already, like almost in the middle of things. But yeah, like when you really think about it, that they start off as adults, they've lived these rich lives, they go into a wardrobe, which they don't even recognize, I think, as
Right.
the wardrobe. Then they come out and it's like, oh, they're young again. And nothing has really changed. So like, and I'm
Right.
thinking it's shortly after they disappeared where the Telmarines, who are the invading nation, come in and take over Narnia.
Mm,
We're essentially left to their own devices,
right.
you know, and magic has essentially left Narnia. Like at that point in the Silver Chair, Narnians have been hunted to the point of extinction. So the few remaining ones are in hiding.
Mhm.
And the young prince of the Telmarines is the only one who believes of the Narnia that was. It's almost been treated as if it was a myth, like Aslan never existed. He's the figment of a primitive nation. There are no talking animals. And I think at that point it's because animals, I think, have to a certain extent lost the gift of speech. Like there are some that do talk, but there are a lot that don't. Yeah, so like it's centuries have passed. So when Peter and Susan come back, it's like, what's happening here? But they get their bearings pretty quickly. They help Prince Caspian defeat his wicked uncle, and then they go back to their own world and just continue with their lives.
Yeah, I mean that and it's funny, like I was writing notes and like, and so I see all these grown-ups riding through the woods together and having a great time. And I wrote they never went home. And then they go home and I'm like, still that just makes more questions for me. We're a little concerned that all 4 of the royal family just disappeared.
Like I sometimes wonder if, considering how they enter the world, if the Narnians were slightly more forgiving of the fact that they could have just up and left. But But yeah, yeah, I guess it's just one of those things that they managed. Oh, just a fun fact that I found out when I was looking for something. So there's this church in Yorkshire, England, that they actually installed 7 Narnian characters in their outer walls. So they have Aslan, Mr. Tumnus, and I don't know if they also have like the children, but I thought it was so cool, and you could see the statues online.
Right.
And it was done fairly recently in November. So I thought it was a cool fact. So that's how I'll end it.
Thank
Well,
you.
Yeah, thank you so much for listening to us. We hope you enjoyed this. I think the films are worth viewing. They're not perfect, but they're still entertaining. And the books are definitely something that I think, regardless of whether you are religious or not, I think they can still be enjoyed. So yeah, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye, everyone.